Buzz Aldrin. Mr. Aldrin, it's a pleasure to talk to you about just about anything, but particularly about this latest book, Mission to Mars, which, if you could describe Mission to Mars in a nutshell, well, it sounds like you've described it in the title. This is all about your vision for not only going to Mars, but perhaps humans sticking around there a while.
Well, we carefully selected 8 chapters, and I think the foreword that is written by my son is an outstanding summary of what he thinks his father was able to do with a very critical subject today because of some mistakes and ineffective implementation of plans and varieties of things on top of underfunding always what the government would like to see come out of the space program, which so much advances technology and inspires the young people. I think we've just let our nation down by allowing us to founder in the areas of space leadership in transportation and exploration, expanding human presence outward, when we think more of doing things that are diversions of what is so important to me, and I think the next generations to come, and that is to expand human activities outward. And I certainly think that this is now the time in the near future to make a commitment to permanence of human beings on another planet in the solar system.
What, in your estimation, happened between the time when we were going to the moon and we went from having no space program at all in this country to being on the moon in a relatively short period of time? So if we had stayed with that timeline of progression, one would think that by now we would have been to Mars, perhaps, or at least a lot closer than we actually are. What happened between the time, in your opinion, what happened between the time we were landing on the moon, or we stopped going to the moon in the early 1970s, and now? Did the government just stop caring about the space program? Did the public stop caring about it? What all has happened?
Well, it's a little bit of those two subjects. However, we did make use of some of the equipment when we did Skylab missions of long duration with parts of the rocket booster, and we did make progress by doing a joint rendezvous with the Russian spacecraft where we did most of the actions. Before I left NASA, however, there was a program that I witnessed the very beginnings of, and very unfortunately, it did not continue because of safety concerns and cost concerns, but we would really like to have today 2-stage, fully reusable launch systems with the booster rocket, wings and wheels to fly back to its launch site, and the orbiter to carry only the crew and not the crew and cargo, and also have wings and wheels and fly back to the launch site. The cargo, of course, would be put up separately with the reusable booster. We would love to have that today, but because of details I just don't think it's worth going into right now, but they were correctable. They were kind of based on politics and other desires for short-term gain. that resulted in our losing that opportunity. And then we had to design quickly a space shuttle that the accident board certainly pointed out certain flaws in that shuttle system. And we did, unfortunately, have 2 losses of crews on board. The shuttle did not live up to its expectations of 40 or 50 flights a year. The average was around 6 flights a year, and it stretched out much longer. We decided to cancel or retire the shuttle based upon the accident board and President Obama's new program, which was to land people on the moon by 2020, but the manner in which it was implemented left us with essentially nothing and no real way to take our astronauts to our space station, and that's where we are today.
There are some who believe, Mr. Aldrin, that some within government, not necessarily within NASA, but perhaps those controlling the purse strings in Washington, only truly care about a space program, or a lot of other things for that matter, if there is an enemy to defeat. For example, we were in a race with the Soviet Union back in the 1960s. Do you think that's true?
Well, I certainly believe that the technical supremacy that we so ably demonstrated with the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs, and the position that left the United States in, was a very significant cause for the eventual decline and, let's say, capitulation of the Soviet industrial system carried out by Gorbachev, which left us with Russia the way it is today. And we have gained some things cooperating with the Russians. It's cost us a little bit of extra in that we haven't done the things that we maybe should have, and we had to have a more inefficient launch direction to be able to go over the launch sites of Russia.
Mr. Buzz Aldrin is with us. His book is called Mission to Mars. It is his vision to put Americans on the planet Mars by the year 2035. Now, I remember I don't remember because I wasn't alive yet, but President Kennedy said we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. He said that less than a decade before we actually did. Is 2035, more than 2 decades, is that too far off to get some people to really get behind an effort like you're proposing?
Well, I'm trying to encourage this administration to clarify a few things on the 45th anniversary and extend our human missions not just to an asteroid to check out the spacecraft, not to look at the asteroid necessarily, but then to extend that by 2030 to human missions to the moons of Mars, where we'll be able to use that much more later. And then we should clarify our position at the moon, where we should not be sending NASA astronauts to the surface. It's way too expensive. We've already done that. There are major things that we could do at the moon robotically for science and commercial interests, refueling depots among that. And the most important thing is to learn how to assemble an international base of large habitats and laboratories that belong to other people who are landed on the moon, but we practice all of that on the big island of Hawaii, so that not only can we build a base on the moon for other international people to use, but we can build the base on the surface of Mars from the moons of Mars.
You mentioned robotics there, using robotics on the moon. We're using some robotics on Mars right now, and some would argue that using the rovers, other types of robots, are a lot cheaper than sending humans out into space like that. What do you think, or why do you think we need to send humans to Mars rather than continuing to use the rovers and other robots?
Well, let me draw an example presented by the manager of the two rovers on opposite sides, Spirit and Opportunity. They were supposed to last 90 days. One of them stopped after 5 years, and the other one is still going after 10 years. He said that what they accomplished in 5 years of control from the Earth could have been done in 1 week if we had human controllers in orbit around Mars. That's why we must get people close to the place that we're going to build things, and then building a permanent facility on Mars is the epitome, or is the next major step for humans on Earth to embark on establishing a settlement on another planet. That item, that achievement, that commitment will go down in history for hundreds and thousands of years in the future.
Mr. Aldrin, one last question, and by the way, please check out his book, Mission to Mars. It is in your bookstores or available online right now. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask about this, because I've been doing a lot of stuff with World War II veterans as of late, since the number of World War II veterans is rapidly dwindling. But I know that you flew in the Korean War, and a lot of people have forgotten about this due to your multitude of work as an astronaut and what you've done since then. But you flew in Korea. You flew quite a few missions in Korea, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I did. I put in a total of 20 years of total service, including my time at NASA. I'm trying to encourage the veterans to be aware of the 2008 a law that allows them to have the pride to salute the flag during the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance, inside or outside, and the other people, other Americans around, who will see the veterans saluting during the national anthem. I'm also very concerned about 22 suicides per day by veterans of all wars that are afflicted with post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm trying to sense a sense of achievement by teaching veterans to learn how to fly a simulator of a very light airplane, and then to eventually fly in a very light airplane. We're not trying to train pilots, but we're trying to make people feel good about their achievements. And we would also supply an iPad with a control yoke so that they could practice this during their spare time.
That's very cool program. I did not know about that, so we'll be happy to pass that along. And yeah, post-traumatic stress syndrome. We've heard a lot about suicides of late involving soldiers from our more recent wars, Iraq and Afghanistan. But I mean, post-traumatic stress syndrome goes back to the beginnings of fighting. It just seems was that talked about as much in your generation after your experience in the war as it is now?
No, it wasn't. We had a number of people captured as prisoners of war, and our medical treatment for injuries was not as far advanced as it is today. So we have many people who are alive after suffering great disabilities than we did in the past. And that's a great burden on a person to carry for the rest of their lives.
Well, Mr. Aldrin, I very much appreciate your time today. This has been one of the highlights of my life, getting to talk to you. And please go check out the book, Mission to Mars by Buzz Aldrin, and take some of those ideas to heart. And hopefully some who are controlling the money in Washington that have been underfunding NASA for quite some time will listen to Mr. Aldrin as well. Mr. Aldrin, thank you for your book, and really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. And we don't need the government to bring back rocks from space. That's commercial.
True.
That should be done by the commercial people, not the government.